Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villeray.
With a continued passion for public television, we are proud to underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES television.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, about the only good thing that can be said about the condition of the city's streets is that they could slow down fleeing stolen vehicles. This week, the mayor's office created a task force to try to deal with violent crimes. Meanwhile, the council grappled with break-ins in downtown parking lots. We'll be looking at these stories as well as what's next for the Saints and Sean Payton looking for a new job. And we will update the gubernatorial election where there was a surprise among the possible candidates. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Jeff Duncan, columnist, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and also WVUE Fox 8 sports analyst, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Mike Perlstein, investigative reporter, WWL-TV, Channel 4. We'll stay with Mike because the mayor of New Orleans, LaToya Cantrell, has announced a task force that she has created to try to combat this crime problem in the city.
She sure did, and some people would say, what a coincidence. Councilmember Helena Moreno suggested the same thing 2 days earlier in a letter to the mayor. But the mayor made up a task force by executive order consisting of 14 members, led by Tyrell Morris of the 911 call center, and true to the mayor's call for sort of a holistic approach to the violent crime problem. It includes, in addition to frontline criminal justice players like the interim police chief Michelle Woodfork, District Attorney Jason Williams, judges from criminal and juvenile court, but it also includes the director of the Office of Youth and Families. It includes Jennifer Avegno, City Health Director, among others. So exactly what is going to come out of a task force? It's supposed to bring to bear all of the potential resources that those different departments can bring to bear. There were some kind of glaring omissions from the panel, one being the city council. Mm-hmm. First of all, it had been suggested, and I did ask the mayor about the link, and she said, well, it's good to see we're aligned, but she didn't give any credit to the council or name them on the panel. And no real community members. These are all, different city offices and agencies. Mm-hmm. They will clearly have to engage with the community. That's where the problem lies. Just what that interaction is going to be is yet to be seen. But she did give a 60-day timetable for them to come up with some kind of blueprint for an action plan. Now, without the council being directly on the task force itself, they're certainly going to be involved. It's actually going to start next week, where J.P. Morrell, now council president, has called for a special meeting on the issue of crime. Mm-hmm. And expect that the task force and what their plans and goals are is going to be a big topic of that.
And before the council or before the Criminal Justice Committee?
No, this is the full council special meeting on crime. So what you have at the very least is all of the different agencies starting to focus very intently on this issue. It's clearly been a problem as long as I can remember, but far more acute. And I think the events over the past couple weeks, including 3 mass shootings, more than a murder a day to start off 2023, has really led to an outcry, people being fearful, and it runs the spectrum. I know we'll talk about car break-ins a little later. But for ordinary citizens not to feel safe from either car burglary, theft, all the way down to, stray bullets on the interstate or in their neighborhoods, right. Somebody had to act. So that's at least, we're getting some people focusing on the problem.
Now, these experts that they brought in a few months ago, from New York, or these?
Right, former New York police Commander Fausto Pichardo leading the consultant.
So didn't anything come out of that? I mean, did they have some special wisdom that the task force wouldn't have, or?
Well, I will say that sometimes it helps to have an outside, pair of eyes with some expertise to kind of look at, what's being done. And, I can tell you that the consultants, and it also includes John Linder, who was here previously under Richard Pennington, helped come up with the Pennington plan that was effective. They can see pockets of inertia, things that are maybe not up and stepping the way they would to address what is clearly an emergency situation. Our crime levels will probably put us, once it's all calculated, at the highest per capita murder rate in the entire country. And not that we haven't been there before, number one, and we've been in the top 5, for going on a decade. So, but a different set of eyes. Now, I will say that as far as practical measures, we also have now the interim police chief, Michelle Woodfork, and she is working hand in hand with the consultants to come up with a crime-fighting plan. Now, this is something that in 4 years under Sean Ferguson, there was a clamor for some kind of blueprint plan, however he wanted to phrase it, and never did come up with the crime plan.
For the NOPD you're talking about.
For the NOPD to, direct its forces, obviously depleted forces. We all know the manpower shortage. But in 4 years, never came up with a crime plan. It's a little bit behind the scenes, but his departure had something to do with the fact that, he never did draw up that plan.
So this is separate from what the crime task force will come up with.
And that's what I'd say.
Will these plans be working in tandem together? It's a lot of plans, maybe, that'll be out there.
Well, I think the most important to get off the ground up and running immediately would be the crime-fighting plan of the NOPD. And I did sit down with Michelle Woodfork one-on-one, and she broke a little news. It was a kind of introductory, interview, but she said, well, just the previous night, she started her own special unit made up of Special Operations Division, K-9, and others to all band together. They had been kind of working separately, but she had them band together in proactive policing. That's a term we haven't heard in several years.
Right.
In fact, under the previous chief, Sean Ferguson, he eliminated the proactive policing, which was task forces in the districts, major narcotics, and the highly celebrated Tiger unit focusing on, serial armed robbers, all got disbanded. And the force, with response times being very long, was almost completely reactive. And this interim chief now says, and I thought it was kind of a stunning indictment without singling out Sean Ferguson to throw him under the bus, to say, I'm going to do something completely the opposite.
Okay. We'll see where it all goes. And of course, we haven't even touched on the shortage of police officers issue. That'll be for another discussion about what they're going to do about that.
That limits
That's
all the
recruitment.
things that they can do. Is
Right.
That's the elephant in the room.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. Jeff, let's go on over to you. Actually, no, I'm wrong on that. We're going to Errol, and we're going to talk politics first.
Yeah, the big surprise this week was Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser announcing he was not going to run for governor. Most people assume if you run for lieutenant governor, of course you can run for governor one day. But he said he's not, and several reasons. And I think he was a little bit bugged when Jeff Landry got that early endorsement by the Republican Party, state Republican Party, and that affects the flow of money and that sort of thing. But I got to tell you, I've always thought like the greatest job in the world is to be a lieutenant governor, all right? Because you got prestige. In Louisiana, they're in charge of conventions, so you go to a lot of parties. You go to the Macy's parade, the Rose Bowl parade, and so you travel around, and I think it's a fun job. But also, every day you wake up with the possibility that before the day's over, you're going to be governor. And so it's a good gig, and then it's not term limited. And so you could be lieutenant governor conceivably if the voters are agreeing for the rest of your life. And so I could see not wanting to leave that job, but also historically, the lieutenant governor's job has really never been a stepping stone for governor. There are very few examples of a lieutenant governor running for governor and being elected. The most recent was Kathleen Blanco, but across time that very seldom happens. Now, there are several examples of a lieutenant governor becoming governor because the governor had to resign or died, but in terms of going on and winning election on their own, And I think the reason is that when the lieutenant governor runs for governor, the opposition blames all the problems in the state on the lieutenant governor. So you've been here 4 years, we need some fresh face. And so it's hard to make that step. And so you can see him just being comfortable staying where he is.
But he is going to have some competition. Some other folks are saying that they're going to.
Well, I'm sure people will, but he's got a good head start. Yes, it's not automatic, but he's been all around the state. I mean, he's been traveling around the state.
He's definitely known. But what about for governor? Other candidates that have jumped in?
Well, I guess you call the front runner right now is Jeff Landry. Landry's kind of a curious candidate. He has a lot of money. He has about $7 million. He has a lot of people who like him because he's sort of like the far right among the conservatives. But a lot of people don't like him too. He has a high negative also that he has to overcome. The next would be John Schroeder, who's the state treasurer, who a lot of people don't even know. I mean, he's a state treasurer, but he doesn't really have a really high profile. Today, a state senator from Slidell, Sharon Hewitt, announced that she was running. She's not well known, but the Slidell area, the Slidell, New Orleans area, is a good political base. She's been she's an engineer, and she worked for Shell at one point, and she's in charge of the Republican caucus. She was also in charge of the committee, the governmental committee, that did all the realignment. So she's obviously someone that has some kind of chops in government, and so she's in it. Among the rumored names, the name this is Percy, I keep thinking the one to watch is Garrett Graves, who's a congressman from the Baton Rouge area, who, because he's a congressman, he can run and not have to give up his office because it's not part of the state thing.
Okay, so it's starting to fill in. Time will tell. All right, thanks a lot, E. All right, over to you now, Jeff. Okay, this was not the season we thought we were going to have.
Yeah, very disappointing, right? 7-10, the losingest season they've had in 17 years, all the way back to pre-Sean Payton, Drew Brees day. No one expected this. This team harbored Super Bowl, maybe not Super Bowl, but certainly playoff aspirations this year, and finished third in what was a historically weak division. Not only were they not successful on the field, but they were frankly pretty boring on the field. Those years of having Drew Brees and Sean Payton, the high-flying offense that set all these records, now a defensive-oriented team under Dennis Allen in his first year, and really struggled offensively, ranked among the bottom of the league in scoring, among the bottom of the league in total yards, had some quarterback issues, went to 2 different quarterbacks. So a lot of struggles, a lot of things that I don't think the front office anticipated, a lot of injuries. They've got to look really hard at their medical staff. It's been the second year in a row that they've just had a spree of injuries to key players. I know they've tried to address it, but it's something that they're going to have to take a hard look at. This is a big offseason for them. They're at something of a crossroads, I think, in the post-Drew Brees transition. Without a Hall of Fame quarterback, those guys don't grow on trees. But the generational leadership of Sean Payton and Drew Brees, I think we're seeing the inevitable drop-off.
And doesn't the question start with who is going to be that quarterback of the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, so well, they came out today, actually, Mickey Loomis, and said Dennis Allen is going to be remaining the head coach. I think there was some question that they may do a one-and-done with Dennis Allen. They are fully behind Dennis Allen as head coach, they being Gail Benson and Mickey Loomis. But they've got to find a quarterback, and those are difficult to find. Everybody in the league is trying to find somebody like that. I don't think Andy Dalton is going to be back as the starting quarterback. I think he may be brought back as the backup, which is what he was brought in to do behind Jameis Winston. There was a little bit of a change in plans there. I think that threw off the whole season, to be honest with you. The quarterback situation never really solved. Andy Dalton came here to be a backup, and so that's the biggest question. And
what
everyone
about
in the league
Taysom,
deals
too?
with it.
That's the only time they weren't boring.
Right.
When Taysom had the ball.
Right, and the problem with Taysom Hill, of course, is he's more of a running quarterback, and they tend to get injured in this league. It's a violent league, and almost around the league you see every running quarterback ends up on the injured reserve list. And Taysom Hill's had concussion issues, so they have to kind of limit his use. I think it'll be interesting to see if the fans stick with this team. They've been extremely loyal for a long period of time. I have a lot of friends, colleagues. It's expensive to go to NFL games. Are you going to continue to support the team when they're not only losing, but not very exciting while losing? I think that's the question the front office and the administration have to answer.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a suite owner who is diverting his money to the Pelicans.
Yeah.
He said, I'm done. The Pelicans are so much more fun. I'm done.
Yeah, not alone in that regard.
And
I've got a lot of
Pelicans
friends.
are winning. People want to back a winner.
Right.
And so, like Jameis Winston and Michael Thomas, probably not going to be returning.
I think Michael Thomas will end up being released in the next 6 weeks or so. I don't think he'll be on this roster past middle of March. The organization would have to commit $31 million to him if he's on the roster past mid-March. I can't see that happening. I think they recently restructured his contract to make it feasible for them to move on from him. Jameis Winston, I think, will also be a cap casualty. The fact that he lost his starting job and never regained it after such a quick hook that they had on him, that was puzzling to say the least. And I know he was very upset about it. I think it's probably best for him to get a fresh start elsewhere.
All right, disappointing season, no doubt.
Very much.
All righty, Jeff, thanks a lot. All right, Dawn, over to you. And the streets of the city of New Orleans, what can I say?
It's kind of a nightmare. You know, you go one way and get diverted to go another way and get diverted to go another way. It's because the city will tell you there are more than 401 miles of roadway being repaired in the largest program ever to happen in our streets in this generation. There is some good news I guess repairs are good news, but the project in front of the zoo that we've talked about on this program since 2017 is supposed to be finished next month. From Nashville to Leake Avenue, where every day it's a different direction. If you're driving that road, you don't know which way they're going to send you and which side of the road. That is supposed to be complete. Almost every neighborhood has been touched by this project. It's combined money with FEMA and Housing and Urban Development and the Sewerage and Water Board. It's kind of everything all together at once. There are currently 56 active projects in the city totaling $624 million. Since 2018, they've completed 140 projects. So there are literally projects everywhere. The best way to find out if you're going to be diverted or to report a problem is to go to Roadwork NOLA, that website. You can click report a pothole. You can map your street and see what project is happening and who's doing it. The projects often involve ADA compliance with sidewalks and curb cuts. So it's a lot more than just the roads at once. There's also a new pothole patching program that's supposed to come online later this year. Instead of just patching with asphalt that doesn't last, they're supposed to be adding a new system. They didn't give me many details on what maintenance crews will be doing, but it will be more permanent than the asphalt patches. There are Public Works Department filling potholes. There's Sewerage and Water Board cutting up roads. That hasn't changed. The coordination of work still hasn't changed in the city. So when maintenance is required, it seems to always happen after a roadway's been repaired, and then the Sewerage and Water Board comes behind the city and digs that road right back up. That hasn't changed with this whole $2.3 billion project.
And so you described, along in front of the zoo, that's a nice long track of roadway that has been repaired. But oftentimes we just sort of see a block and then nothing done in the next block. Is that going to improve a bit?
Actually, that's supposed to make you happy. Good luck there. Because a lot of the work orders came earlier and have had change orders through time. They've tried to limit it to blocks at a time so that they can alert neighbors and businesses to completion times and be more accurate with their completion times. If the project spans 10 blocks, it's a lot harder to say, we're going to start on this Wednesday and be done on that Friday. If it's one block at a time that they're working or a couple blocks at a time, it's a lot easier to have accurate start and stop dates. So business interruption knows when it's going to happen and if you're not going to have access to your driveway. So it's a good mixed with the bad. But, if you drive uptown, I know Jeff and I both drive uptown, you go 2 blocks one way and then you're diverted again, or you know how to straddle my teenager knows how to drive really well and straddle potholes because of it.
It's a positive.
Yes, it's a positive, exactly.
If you're learning how to drive, that's what you learn to do.
Yes.
That's for sure. All right, Don, thanks a lot. We will hope for the better.
Yes.
All righty. Okay, Mike, over to you. Parking lot break-ins during events like Saints games and Pelicans games. I mean, we have just really seen an onslaught of them, and people are really upset.
Right, and the spectrum of crime problems with shootings and killings on one end, this is on the other end. It's a nuisance crime, but it affects far more people because somebody inclined to break into cars and, a lot full of them can break into, a dozen, 2 dozen cars within, minutes. It's pretty clear that they're going to, the path of least resistance, where there isn't a police presence, where it's been at Pelicans games and Saints games where a lot of people drive in, park, add insult to injury. You're probably watching the Saints lose, paying money for your parking lot, and then you return to see that your car window is smashed.
If not stolen, because there's stolen vehicles too.
There's that, especially if you drive a Kia or a Hyundai. It does look like it's, a loosely organized, if that, crime of opportunity led by juveniles and young offenders rooting around looking for guns primarily. And as much as the police and other officials warn people, don't carry a firearm in your car for just that reason, people still do that. And with a rash of break-ins, you always hear that X number of guns were taken in these break-ins.
Right. And so council is thinking of taking some action. What is that?
Yeah, and hearing all of the complaints, and it really reached a tipping point after first it was a Pelicans game, then it was the police department coming up with a plan to include more patrols around those. These are parking lots, privately owned parking lots. The police put more officers in and around those areas, and it still happened after a Saints game.
It used to be if you go to a parking lot, at least there was this little cabin where there's this guy that you go and pay.
Right.
And so there was a presence, and you can see what the presence is. And then they switched those automated machines. Now they don't have that, and now it's by an app.
Yeah, it's modern day,
So there's actually no visibility of any kind of presence.
No attendant. And in some cases, if it's an evening event, like most Pelicans games are, there's poor lighting, and not a lot of police presence. We all know about the severe shortage of officers, and they just can't be in all these different places. The criminals who are doing this, they're savvy. They know that people's attention is diverted for 3+ hours at a Saints game, and they can pretty much get away with this with impunity and a lookout. So the council, it was the Community Development Committee, endorsed a proposal, so it doesn't have any force of law, and it will go before the full council for debate. But the proposal is a list of things that the parking lot owners would be required to do, I guess led by having an attendant, having some actual human being there to deter. And there was a little pushback during the debate about this from these parking lot owners, which...
Well, you could say every private business has to have its own security. And where are your tax dollars going? Isn't it the role of government to provide?
An attendant isn't necessarily security. An attendant is just that.
Right.
And certainly...
So if every business has to hire an armed guard...
Right. I mean, an attendant to watch over a bunch of cars is different than an armed security guard. But at the very least, the way these criminals operate is to get away with the crime and not have a confrontation. So having some presence in the form of an attendant probably would deter a lot of it. People who are breaking into cars, they're trying to use stealth and not have any kind of confrontation. And I do think that if it does reach the force of law, there's going to be some serious pushback. I know there might be some legal challenges. What can you impose on businesses? But there's also just the reality of the shortage of officers, and are these parking lots, which are lucrative business, by the way, are they willing to be a good corporate citizen?
And the break-ins don't occur just in these parking lots. They occur around the city. Certainly neighborhoods have had this problem too. So
neighborhoods and these, other than these parking lots for special events only, would not be covered. So it's pretty limited.
Okay. All right. We'll see where that all moves along. Jeff, real quick to you. Sean Payton, where's he going?
I don't know. I mean, it was about this time a year ago when he walked away from the New Orleans Saints. He's still under contract with the Saints. He's been ready to launch a speed dating. Basically, he's going to be interviewing with the Houston Texans, the Denver Broncos, and also the Arizona Cardinals. You don't find coaches of his pedigree on the market very often. He's a hot commodity. I think he'll end up sticking with Fox Sports and not coaching anywhere next year. But if he does sign with somebody, there's going to have to be compensation worked out that'll come back to the Saints, maybe
Because
in the
he is
form of
still
draft
under
picks.
contract with the Saints.
Correct, and all the way through next season as well. So,
But
the
why is he
Saints would
doing
get
this? Like when he left, it seemed like he loved the Saints and would never go anywhere else. And
I think he got burned out, Errol. I don't think there's anything more than that. I know there's a lot of theories. We live in a town of conspiracy
burning
theories.
healed kind of quickly.
Yeah, well, look, he done it 16 years in one market. It's almost unprecedented here. It is unprecedented in New Orleans, and I think he just needed time away, and he's got the itch again to coach, and I think he'll do it in time. But I don't know if this year an attractive job is going to open that's going to lure him in. But you never know. Once you walk in that building, sit down across to somebody, can change your mind quickly. He's an impulsive guy.
Well, you don't think he has the itch, though, just to get back on the field, to think, everyone, of course, thinks, I can be the turnaround
It's got to be the
artist.
right fit, though, Mike. I mean, like, these jobs that open, they're open for a reason because they're not winning. And I'm not sure that one is very compatible to what he wants to win another Super Bowl. I don't see those opportunities right now with the teams he's looking at, but you never know. Dallas Cowboys could open. I think he'd be there tomorrow if that job does open.
Okay, but he does have the option of just waiting it out for another year, too, is what
Yeah,
you're
he's very happy living out in L.A. right now doing TV.
Okay. All righty, Jeff. Thanks a lot. All right, guys, around the table, other stories. We begin.
Well, the Miss Universe contest of all things is going to be in New Orleans. The reigning Miss Universe is from India, and she'll be there. And she was crowned in Israel on December 21. She'll be there to crown the new person. A company from Thailand has bought the contest. And they seem to, I know there's some kind of sensitivity about this kind of contest, but at least if you read their press release, there seems to be a lot of sensitivity to women's issues involved with this. But anyway, it's going to be at the Montreal Convention Center. They have about 90 contestants, and they're saying it's going to have a worldwide following. I don't know if that's the case, but it's a big deal,
Okay, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, let's go back to you.
Yeah, Tulane coming off an epic football season. They're not the only program doing well. Ron Hunter's men's basketball team's off to a great start. They're 4-1 in the conference. And Tuesday night, uptown at Fogelman Arena, they played the #1 team in the country coming in, the Houston Cougars, who are a big conference rival. If you're looking for something to do, it's a fun venue. It's a little cracker box of a gym, and Ron Hunter's team's playing really well right now.
Okay, great. Done.
Speaking of other people doing really well, LSU gymnastics, which has a little craziness ensuing too, with one of its athletes, Olivia Dunn, who's from New Jersey, who is the highest earning women's college athlete because she's got 6.7 million TikTok followers. LSU has had to add extra security at gymnastics meets and as they travel because of the packs of young boys who are looking to meet Olivia.
Okay, so she is quite the influencer then.
Yeah, good gymnast and a really cute girl.
Okay.
So,
all righty, Mike, over to you.
When you look at the crime situation in New Orleans, and you can't ignore the recall petition that's still circulating. It's been a little out of the news, but they have a February 22nd deadline to meet the number of signatures. I know that in the behind the scenes, that is a topic in the administration, and perhaps a catalyst for some of the action we've seen on dealing with crime.
Speaking of TikTok, that clock is ticking. Okay, and ours is too, so we got to go. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a continued passion for public television, we are proud to underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES Television.